Okay, hi, I'm jdawgg, and welcome to my proper terrain tutorial. Um, a lot of people, a lot of questions are, why, why is my terrain, looking all weird when I'm trying to edit the height and stuff like that and add hills? And it's because they're painting their terrain as one big patch, and that's not the way to do it. So, first off, this is the way people are usually doing it, is they're painting out a big block of terrain. And I've also found people leaving them as brushes, and that's also a bad thing. You don't want to leave them as brushes. But people are painting out big boxes of terrain, and they're going to patch some terrain mesh. They're making it 15 by 15, saying, "Oh, hey, it's gonna have a lot of vertices I can edit." But it's like spreading butter over too much bread. It's the vertices, even though it's 15 by 15, they're too far spread apart. So if I hit Y here and I go to advanced edit mode, and I'm going to paint the height. Alright, notice that the vertices are still way too spread apart. I'm only getting like 4 to 6 here at a time. So if I go to try to raise it, it gets these really jagged edges. I mean, even if I could drop down to a grid 1 and drop my amplitude down and come over here, it's just going to edit slower, but it's not going to get as perfect of a hill. You see, there's always going to be that big flat plateau right there because I'm editing those 4 pieces at a time. It's very boxy and cornery and angly, and it looks really bad. So the way we're going to solve that is we're not even going to make one that big. Instead, and there's no set size to these, there's no set grid. It's just you make it square first of all. That's important. And so it could be 320 by 320 maybe. That looks pretty good. Um, and now if we go to patch and we go to simple terrain mesh, we do 15 by 15. We gotta bring it down. Okay, so you see how big it is compared to our little actor. It's not that big of a patch. But now, let's move this guy out of here. If we go ahead and we edit this piece now, we can decrease the radius significantly, and we still get a good number of pieces to manipulate, and it gets a much more smooth hill. And that's the way you want to do terrain editing. So obviously you can't have a map that small, so the way we do this now is we're going to go ahead and copy the brush that we've made, already turned into a simple terrain mesh, and now we're going to drop down to grid 1, and we're going to zoom in, and we're going to line this up perfectly. Now, normally if you've already manipulated terrain and you're trying to line it up, you should bring up the vertices, and you should, for both of them, and you should go down and hit Control K to connect all these. But we don't need to do that since they haven't been edited. Right there they are as close as they can possibly get. That's considered connected. So now that we've lined those two up, we'll go ahead and copy both of those. Line it up there. Now we'll copy all 4 of them, and it's like an exponential growth now. It doesn't take as long as you might think, because now we have all the more patches in which we can use. Now I'll use even more, copy it, bring it down. So the idea is you want to make plenty of terrain for your entire map. You don't want to, I'm sorry, I got a cold. You don't want to make some of your map and then realize, oh crap, I got to add on more terrain. I mean, it's not a horrible thing. It'll be a little complicated because you got to get the vertices to line up properly, the same amount of count and stuff like that. But it's best if you can get all of your terrain laid down first and then delete off terrain that you don't need later. So right there, I got a really large terrain size. Now, a map like Ryan Valley is probably a little bit bigger than this, so we can just zoom out. If you hold down Shift and just left click and hold and drag, you can select more, then it'll just keep selecting. Or you can do the draw box and select inside. And now we can copy this whole thing. And now we're basically going to quadruple our current map size. It's going to be huge. when you get to this point where it's this many, I probably should have just draw a big box and do the select inside, but this works. Okay, copy all that. It's starting to get laggy. And I don't think you're ever going to need more terrain than this, and this is probably way overkill. If you got a map this big, then it's probably going to be laggy in game. So there we go. I got all the terrain I'll ever need, all laid down. Perfect. So now if I want to go and I want to start manipulating terrain, had them selected. Now if I want to go and start editing terrain, I can go ahead and select all the brushes around the area that I want to manipulate. And then I can go ahead and go to it. And you know, as long as you're not too close to these edges when you're manipulating, you won't break the seam, and that's perfect. If I want to make some more hills towards this edge over here, then it's as simple as just having to select the next brushes that are close to it. And now when I manipulate them, they both get edited at the same time. And there we have it. So that's the proper way to do terrain. Just like I said, lay down way more than you're ever going to need. That way, let's say my map only ends up being around here. Okay, there we go. So even if my map ends up being around there, I can just go around and I can delete all the terrain from this point on. And obviously all of this stuff down here as well. So, and there you go. It's a lot easier than making your map, realizing you need it bigger, and then trying to add on new pieces of terrain. It's not going to work as well that way. So there you go. And you know, obviously right now it looks pretty yuck. It's going to be hard to edit your map with all these crisscrosses going around down there. So you can always just go up to view and you can go ahead and hide the terrain, or you know, select the pieces of terrain you don't want to show, and you can do hide selected. So there's easy ways to get rid of this while you're making your map and just make it show back in at the end. So I hope that helped.